In June of 1964, a fisherman pulled a severed human arm from a gravel pit east of Tip City on State Route 571. A search was undertaken to find the rest of the remains, and another arm was found in the gravel pit by divers. An attempt was made to drain the gravel pit, which was not successful. 4 days later, another fisherman found a burlap bag in a channel of the old Miami-Erie Canal. This bag contained a dismembered human torso. Later, a head and a leg were also found in the canal. It took 2 months for the remains to be identified as 43-year-old Daisy Evelyn Shelton, a middle-aged mother from Dayton. Daisy was born February 19, 1921 in Portsmouth, but had lived in Dayton for at least 20 years. She worked at Delco, an automotive electronics corporation. Daisy was described as soft-spoken, neat, and nicely dressed. Those who knew her said she had a nice home and kept her house clean. However, her personal life was filled with troubles. Her marriage to her husband Harvey was full of turmoil, and they regularly fought. Even though she had separated from her husband 4 years prior to her disappearance, Daisy had other struggles as she was addicted to alcohol. She would frequently get into trouble at bars and would even get beaten up. Records show that she had been arrested 16 times since 1957 for intoxication. She was also arrested for lack of morals and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. She would later be committed to Dayton State Hospital for 2 months from October 21st, 1959 until almost the end of the year. In August of 1963, she was staying with relatives in Texas when she was arrested by police on an intoxication charge. Daisy was last seen shortly after her release from the city jail in September of 1963. She had been reported missing by her brother and her daughter in June of 1964, after they hadn't heard from her for months. Her husband was initially questioned, but cleared in her disappearance. After she was identified, the police classified her case as a homicide. The autopsy revealed that her body had been submerged in the water for a period of time ranging from 6 to 9 months. Although the cause of death could not be determined due to the condition of the body, the coroner believed that she had been strangled. Her body was then hacked to pieces by the killer and dumped in the water near Tip City. Without any suspects nor leads, the case grew cold and remained that way for the next 53 years. Then, in 2017, a hospitalized man, believing he was close to death, confessed to a nurse that he had once witnessed a brutal murder. The hospital authorities alerted the police, and they quickly questioned the witness. The witness, who was not named by officials, claimed he saw another man kill Daisy Shelton with a hammer in a home in Dayton, and then saw him dismember her body. The body parts were then discarded in areas with water and around the Dayton suburb of Tip City. The person named as the suspect was cooperative with detectives and consented to multiple interviews. Initially, he denied knowing Daisy, despite their living on the same street and working for the same employer. During an interview in August of 2017, the suspect reluctantly admitted to knowing Daisy Shelton personally. The suspect would later acknowledge that a box from his house was used to carry the victim's remains, and he says it was possible she was killed at his home, but court documents claimed that it was a setup being perpetrated by the eyewitness of the crime. The suspect admitted he looked guilty and could possibly be convicted in court. The witness testified before a grand jury, but died before the case could be prosecuted. The other suspect died in September of 2022 at the age of 92. While details of the case are still murky, for Daisy's granddaughter Maria Walling, the news that the suspect had died was bittersweet. She was happy that she finally had some answers, but sad that her grandmother still did not have justice. Maria also learned that police identified 3 men who were likely involved in her grandmother's death, but all 3 had died before the case was able to go to court. While the family now has answers to who killed Daisy Shelton, police have yet to confirm a motive. but authorities consider the case closed. In 1991, the seaside city of Ventura, California, was rocked by the brutal slaying of Danielle Claus. It was a tragedy that would haunt the community for over 3 decades. Danielle Lynn Claus was born on July 24, 1948. She was a talented artist known for her evocative poetry and creative spirit. Despite facing personal challenges, including a struggle with addiction, she made remarkable strides toward recovery. Danielle's journey of transformation was inspiring. She turned her life around and dedicated herself to helping others facing similar issues. She worked at an adult school in Ventura, providing support and guidance to those dealing with addiction. 42 years old Danielle Claus was last seen on July 15, 1991, at around 8 p.m., conversing with a man at the corner of Hemlock Street and Thompson Boulevard. Danielle's husband reported her missing the next day when she failed to return home on the morning of July 16, 1991. Her partially clothed and brutally beaten body was discovered on a hillside at the top of Tioga Drive in Ventura, about a mile from where she was last seen. The discovery of her body initiated a thorough investigation by the Ventura Police Department. The crime scene was grim. An autopsy confirmed that Danielle had suffered multiple blunt force injuries to her head, and there was evidence indicating she had also been assaulted. Investigators found a blood-stained rock near her body, which was believed to be the weapon used to take Danielle's life. Detectives meticulously collected evidence from the scene, including fingerprints, cigarette butts, trash papers, and anything that seemed out of place or disturbed. Witnesses described seeing a white pickup truck near the scene, but they could not provide a description of the driver. Detectives canvassed the area looking for a white truck that matched the suspect's vehicle description and interviewed numerous individuals, but were unable to identify a person of interest or the vehicle's owner. With no new leads, eventually the case went cold. In 2018, the notorious Golden State Killer was brought to justice using new investigative techniques that included obtaining cooperation from suspect family members who provided DNA samples. Inspired by seeing how the Golden State Killer case was solved, Officer Tyler Buck, a new detective with the Ventura Police Departments, decided to try the same technique for this case. He meticulously studied Claus's case files, hoping to uncover overlooked details. It was a difficult job, as by that time Claus's case files grew over 1,000 pages. Buck noted that the case's DNA sample had been entered into CODIS, but unfortunately, no matches were found. Buck then reached out to the crime scene investigations team and reviewed the evidence. He discovered that the weapon, a rock and Danielle's fingernail clippings, had never been tested for DNA. In May 2021, investigators tested these items to compare the DNA on the rock and fingernail clippings to the DNA from the assault kit. By September 2021, the results confirmed that all the DNA matched a single unknown suspect. Over the next couple of years, experts developed the suspect's genetic profile and constructed part of his family tree using genetic genealogy. In May 2023, detectives managed to locate the first cousin of the suspect. They contacted her and found out that she only had 2 male first cousins. This narrowed the suspects to 2 brothers, the late Larry Devon Welsh and his brother who lived in Virginia. The living brother provided a DNA sample, and testing confirmed he was not the suspect, but the full sibling of the suspect. Thus, it was confirmed that the DNA from the crime scene belonged to Larry Welsh. Additional factors tied Welsh to the crime. He owned a white Ford Ranger and had a P.O. box in Ventura. Welsh, who was 41 years old at the time of the slaying, had passed away in 1999 due to an overdose. Identifying him, brought a measure of closure to Danielle Claus's family. Her sister, Marcy Forte, expressed her gratitude for the dedication of the Ventura police and everyone involved in solving the case. On Friday, April 19th, 1991, Hibbs's 12-year-old son, David Hibbs, was dismissed early from elementary school and arrived at their Bristol Township, Pennsylvania home at around 1:05 p.m. to find the kitchen on fire. He couldn't get past the kitchen due to the flames and smoke, so he then ran to neighbors and asked for help. After the fire was extinguished, firefighters discovered the charred body of 35-year-old Joy Hibbs on the bed in her son's bedroom. David Hibbs felt responsible for his mother's death, believing his fish tank may have caused the deadly fire. Investigators also initially believed Hibbs died in an accidental fire. But the next day, an autopsy revealed that Joy had not died in the fire, but had been stabbed numerous times and strangled. Police believed whoever killed her started the fire to cover their tracks. Investigators later learned Hibbs had cashed her paycheck hours before her death, and her wallet was found stuffed in the living room couch. Hibbs was likely murdered between 11:50 a.m. and 12:50 p.m. that day. During that 1-hour window, witnesses spotted a blue Chevrolet Monte Carlo parked outside Hibbs' home. At the time, investigators named several suspects, including a guy named Robert Atkins, who had a blue Chevy Monte Carlo and also at one point lived 2 doors away from Hibbs. Atkins occasionally sold marijuana to Hibbs and her husband. He admitted that one time he had an argument with Hibbs and her husband over their claims of low-quality marijuana. David Hibbs told investigators that he remembered Atkins threatening his mother that he would kill her and blow up the house. Atkins remained a person of interest in the murder for the next 3 decades and was interviewed by police multiple times, but maintained his innocence. The case remained cold for 31 years after Joy's murder, until 2022, when Atkins's ex-wife, April Atkins, came forward and told the police that in the afternoon of April 19, 1991, Robert Atkins came home covered in blood. When asked, he admitted stabbing someone and lit their house on fire. He then told her to call out of work and get their children because they were taking a trip to the Poconos. They stayed in Poconos for 2 days and returned back on April 21st. April Atkins said she then discovered that day that it was Joy Hibbs who had been killed. April Atkins told investigators she feared for her own safety if she spoke the truth about her then-husband's role in the murder. The authorities arrested Robert Atkins, and the case went to trial in January of 2024. The trial lasted for less than a week before the jury reached its verdict. Atkins was convicted of first-degree murder and arson for killing Joy Hibbs in April 1991 and then setting the house on fire to cover up the crime. Atkins was sentenced to life in prison without parole for the murder. Joy's husband, Charlie Hibbs, read a victim impact statement in court. Joy was my high school sweetheart, my first love, mother to my children, and the loving soul that kept our family together. According to my faith, I am supposed to forgive, and I am finding difficulty in doing so as this nightmare comes to an end for my family. His is about to start.